sports fans from all around the globe. I am your host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and this is your breakfast bankroll for Tuesday, January 18th, 2022. As myself and my co-host Scott try to get you ready for today's sports market board as we see it, as I see it, as he sees it, as we try to break it down to the best of our ability as we get closer to the window and try to make some money. And ECSI VIP experience on a little heater here. 3-0 yesterday. That's back-to-back 3-0s, a 6-0 heater, up 7.89 units the last 2 days. Yesterday, we talked here with Scott as well. We talked briefly about the San Jose Sharks. They win 6-2. Talked about Dartmouth +2 against Harvard, and I'm not going to lie. Monday nights is my bowling night, and I shot a 279 last night. Last game, 3 strikes, left a 9-pin, and struck out. And the series wasn't the greatest, but it was 11 out of 12, wasn't bad. But anyways, I'm following this damn Dartmouth game, and they're down 13, 8.5. They're down 13. They're down 8. They're down 60-55 with a minute to go. And I check, they lost 60-59. They covered. That's all I cared about. They covered. And I don't know how I didn't ask why. It's been a while since we've been able to pull out a close one. So that got the day to 2-0. And we talked about here on the closing bell yesterday about UNLV, a line that opened at 5.5. Whether it was a correction or whatever, went to 8. We bought it at 7.5, and they win by 25 going away. So a nice 3-0 day there. We talked for a week about the Rams. I couldn't talk enough about Arizona. And if you liked Arizona, you better jumped on them in the first half. You would have known early. You knew at the first quarter they were in trouble there. And lastly, before I bring Scott on, Thursday, 10:30 Eastern. Make sure you guys are here. A good friend of mine is coming on, Brady Tinker. You can follow him at A Cowboy Life at DFW Sports Beat. He does a Cowboy Life podcast, Above the Rim, Off with Helmets. An amazing guy. Inside scoop, works with Dallas Cowboys, Mavericks, Texas Rangers, and our go-to man in the Lone Star State of Texas. He's going to make his debut on the Breakfast Bankroll on Thursday, and I can't wait. We're hoping to get a lot more shows with him, especially as we get closer to baseball. He talks to Mark Cuban all the time. Obviously, he's in the locker room with the Cowboys. Good friends with Jordan Spieth. Wouldn't that be something if we could get Jordan Spieth on here? But anyways, enough from me. Let's bring in some warm weather from the Palm Tree State, from Tampa, the man with the plan, the one and only Mr. Scott E. Webb. Scotty, my brother, what is happening?
Morning, Jeff. How are you today, Brad?
You know, I was up early.
Saw that.
I like it. I've been dying to get into this routine. Was back at it this morning, up at 6. Had to take my daughter to school and her girlfriend, and I got in a brisk 3-mile jaunt. And when I say brisk, it was cold out there, but it was good. Got the blood flowing. Been cracking the whip and ready to go. How about yourself?
Yeah, well, you know how it goes for me. I don't sleep that often, so I'm up all the time usually. So it is what it is, and today is no different. My night was pretty good. I mean, I gave out 3 basketball plays. I won the first 2. The other one, it depends on when you played it. I said under 227.5 on the closing bell show. It got bet up to 229, fell 228. So if you played under 227.5, we lost by half a point. If you played under 229, you win. So I counted as a loser. So anyway, it's I go 2-1 in the NBA yesterday, and then I win the Rams game. So giving out 3-1s, that's not too bad.
going to play Monday morning quarterback for a second. The wild card weekend is usually where the dogs are barking. The only dog that barked was the 49ers. I talked about form, like we were going to the horse track and trying to catch some horses that were in form. The two teams that were leaking the most, I thought, were the Patriots and the Cardinals. And it showed. And everyone wants to, I've wanted to fire Kingsbury or Kingsbury, whatever his name is, for a long, long time. But everyone pooping on Kyler Murray, and yeah, he had a brain fart and he didn't look good. But we talked about his weapons. Rondell Moore, who did play banged up. AJ Green, a shell of himself. I said Ertz, a shell of himself. I'm going to tell you, it's going to come out. Kyler was playing with something. I'm calling turf toe, but whatever it is. But the fact of the matter is, the teams that are left are the teams that deserve to be there. The teams that are playing the best. Thoughts on last night's game? Thoughts on the teams that are left right now, Scotty?
So, last night's game. When you look at these things the way I do, I try to game script it out and try to figure out how things are going to go. And sometimes I'm right and sometimes I'm wrong. And I think for the most part, I've been pretty right. I missed out on whether the game plan for the 49ers and the Cowboys were going to go out the way it was supposed to. Other than that, I think it was pretty close on most of them. And what I try to do is go, okay, here's what the strength of this team is, and here's how they're going to move the ball, and then here's how the other team's going to try to stop it. And then on the other side, okay, how the other team's going to do all that stuff. And yesterday was a very difficult time for what Arizona had to do to beat the Rams. And if you can't run the ball against the Rams and then get them to bite up a little bit to open up your passing attack, that pass rush is going to kill you. And that's what happened because they didn't have enough guys that can block the pass rush, and they didn't have. So the thought was Kyler Murray's going to run around like a chicken with his head cut off. We said that, and it played out just like that. And then Cliff Kingsbury, or whatever his name is not a head coach capable of making an adjustment to help the quarterback. So that makes it a rough spot for that kid back there. And I don't think he's looked good ever since he came back from the IR from earlier in the season. I mean, he missed 3 games, I think. And I don't think he's looked the greatest ever since then. Prior to that, he was unbelievable. So, and then in looking at what's remaining, what's left, it's kind of interesting because I just wrote them down before the show here. So, offensive EPA ranks, right? Of all the teams, there's 8 teams left, and only one of the 8 teams is outside the top 10 in EPA and offense, and that's Tennessee. And then when you talk about defense, there's 3 of the teams that are outside the top 8 or we'll just say top 10 in EPA on defense. So that tells me obviously it's an offensive-driven league, but defense does matter. And then when you talk about quarterbacks, they're in the top 8 for all of them. The highest ranking EPA plus CPOE quarterback is Tannehill, and he ranks 11th. So a couple of things here to keep in mind. If you don't have a quarterback, you ain't going to make it. That's number one. That's obvious. It plays out, and it looks that way, and it seems to be that way. If you don't have a defense, you can overcome that if you have a great offense. And the lowest ranked defense coming in of the remaining teams is Green Bay. Green Bay ranks 22nd actually in defensive EPA, and that sort of surprised me. I didn't think they were quite that bad, but most of that's against the run. So that then precursors a thought process of, okay, if Green Bay can't stop the run, who do they play? Well, they play San Francisco. Well, San Francisco can find ways to run the football. So I sit here and look at that and I go, holy shit. I personally don't think this round of games is going to be all favorites. I think you're going to need to look at some dogs here, so I think that's what's going to end up happening with this set of what is it, 4 games, 8 teams. I think you're going to see some underdog needing to be looked at, and San Francisco is the largest one on the board, and they match up pretty good to this Green Bay team.
I'm so glad that you led into this, because I'm going to just say this. I saw someone on a platform on Twitter last night put out his 4 selections for the weekend and had the audacity to say Green Bay -2.5. I bought it when the line came out. I am just going to say to this, anyone listening and watching right now, there is no planet on earth that opened that game at 2.5. The lowest number that it was opened was a flat 4. And then you saw 4.5 to the sharps. It immediately went to 5, 5.5, and 6 on the Jimmy G report, where again, he's banged up. They don't know if he can go. It could be Trey Lance. Okay. So I got 2 bridges, the Bourne and the Sagamore, a half hour away. If you believe someone got Green Bay -2.5, please show me that ticket at EC Sports Invest on Twitter. I wanted to go to the 4 opening lines because I know we remember what we saw last. I know Vegas knows what they got for each side coming in, most likely, to a certain degree. And these numbers opened up begging for home team action here. Okay. You talked about Green Bay. Now they're at 6. 5.5 across the Vegas Strip. There is some 6s at William Hill and at Westgate. Cincinnati and Tennessee. I had this game probably around a 5. I thought, again, with the week off, fresh, Derrick Henry coming back. Well, I think they think there's some Cincinnati love, because that opened at 3. It's at 3.5 across the Vegas Strip. Your Bucks opened at 2.5, shot rate to 3. And I don't want to say shocker, but again, Kansas City did open at 1.5, went right to 2. It's at 2 or 2.5, depending upon where you shop. Now, before you dive into these, I'm going to ask you one quick question here, Scott. If you don't believe in Tennessee and you don't believe in Cincinnati, and you take a side on the Buffalo or Kansas City, wouldn't you rather take Buffalo at +450 to win the Super Bowl on Sunday, or Kansas City +400 to win the Super Bowl on Sunday versus that game, if you don't believe in Tennessee or Cincinnati?
Well, that makes more sense. I mean, that's the best option, because theoretically, whoever wins that game is going to beat the other game. So, I guess the best way to gauge that would be to think of it in terms of, okay, you've got what is it, Kansas City? What's Kansas City on the money line right now? Kansas City is what, -135, something like that?
Yes.
So Kansas City is -135 on the money line. They're going to be minus probably 135 if they played Tennessee or Cincinnati. And just think of it, if they're on the road, and they'll still be a favorite against Tennessee on the road. And if they play at home against Cincinnati, they're going to be a much bigger minus there. So in theory, if you're going to do it that way, then you're way better to take that logic, because then in theory you're only really betting whether they can beat the NFC champion, right? I mean, because if you think that Kansas City or Buffalo, and maybe you pick both of them, maybe you don't know who's going to win this game, and you pick both of them and bet them both. And you bet them both because what was it? You said it was Buffalo's plus 450, and Kansas City was plus 400 or something.
Well, but we talked about it last week, and you could have got Buffalo at plus 750.
Yeah.
or 700. Okay, so now they're down to, I think they're plus 400, and Kansas City's plus 350. I talked to we have some preseason 49er future tickets here, and this weekend we gave out Packers plus 375 to win the Super Bowl again by default, and saying if they get to the Super Bowl, there'll be some nice hedge opportunities. So my thought process is this: is if you take a stand on that Kansas City Buffalo game, let's just say you think Buffalo's the side there, and you take Buffalo plus 400, you could literally get into the Super Bowl with a plus 375 and a plus 400. Grab some popcorn, some nachos, some buffalo wings, and just sit back and enjoy the game.
Yeah, no, I mean that's the idea. I'm trying to figure out why you wouldn't bet either one or bet both. I mean, what's the drawback of betting both Buffalo and Kansas City to win the Super Bowl? I mean, what's the drawback other than they don't win? That would be the issue is whoever if they get there and the NFC team beats them. So that and then theoretically you could hedge that and you could have it on the other side if you wanted to and get out of it. But the point of it is that I mean that's where logic speaks a lot of ways, and that's a perfect example too of how to create a strategy that puts you in a position to be flexible and do the different things you need to do to maneuver in a market, because that's what you want to do. You want to have options, you want to have flexibility, you want to be able to do different things, and you can only really do that if you have future bets.
Yeah, and again, we try to talk futures. We try to, in today's market now, like the future market changes every week in the NFL after each week. So to go in August, if there was a team that you thought's going to get off to a hot start and you couldn't get involved in it, or you didn't want to tie up your money for 4 or 5 months, I get it. Okay, if you were hot and heavy on the Arizona Cardinals in August or September and you waited, well, you weren't getting a good price because they come out 7-0 and your market is shot. As the season progressed, you get a couple of these teams on a 2 or 3 game slide, you can jump back in. So again, we're sitting there with some preseason or pre-flop 49er tickets, NFC champs and Super Bowl champs, but we also had, Green Bay plus 375. And again, I keep saying Green Bay by default, and I'm going to stick to it because I think they'll find a way to win this week, even though I'm rooting for the Niners. They'll host either LA or Tampa. They'll be favored, and I think they'll find a way to get to the Super Bowl. And I think we've come across the fact that, Buffalo and Kansas City are the logical picks. Now, with the opening line of 1.5, and these two met last year in the AFC Championship, I'm almost thinking Vegas has made a stand and say it's going to be the changing of the guard, and Allen and company find a way to win on Sunday.
I'm interested in that game in a sense that that's the only game this weekend that the defenses aren't given any credit, meaning that the total in that game is, what is it, 54.5, 55, something like that?
So that was 55. You can get it at 54.5 right now at Westgate and Circa.
Right. So look at all the other ones. The other ones are all under 49. And so these are the teams that are playing that are not getting any credit on defense. And when I looked at the numbers, EPA rank, so of the 8 teams that are remaining, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers ranked number 1. They're 4th in football. And again, let me preface what I'm saying. Since week 10 plus last week's game, that's what I'm doing. So the first playoff game plus since week 10, Tampa Bay is 4th in all of football, but in the remaining 8 teams, they are 1st. The number 2 team is the Kansas City Chiefs. The number 3 team is San Francisco. Number 4 is the Rams. Number 5 is Tennessee, and number 6 is Buffalo. So, and then you have Cincinnati and Green Bay. But anyway, the point I guess I'm trying to make here is that these teams, and especially Kansas City, is not getting any respect on defense, and I'm not so sure that that's the way that should be. But they did play this year. Buffalo beat them 38-20, so that puts it over that 54 number. In the championship game last year, it was 24-38. Kansas City beat them, and again, that puts them over the number. And then you sit here and you got to go, okay, why is this the way this is going? And potentially it's because of the quarterbacks. So then you start to look at it, and of the top 8 quarterbacks, Allen ranks 5th, believe it or not, and that's in CPOE plus EPA. He ranks 5th. And the quarterback for Mahomes, he ranks 3rd. Burrows is 1st, and Rodgers is 2nd, and then Mahomes, and then, believe it or not, Garoppolo statistically is 4th, and then Allen, and then Brady, Stafford, and Tannehill. So if you're gonna sit, I have a hard time, Jeff, with this game being a 55-point game. With the defenses the way that Kansas City has played. They're not the same team as last year, and they're not the same team as last year because they play better defense this year. And I don't think, well, I shouldn't say it this way because you never know what's going to happen. They are way more healthy on the offensive line than they were last year. And that doesn't necessarily mean that Patrick Mahomes isn't going to run around like a chicken with his head cut off, but it does mean that that's not what's going to be predicted. And I think that sets a tone that, do the Chiefs get off to a good start or not? They didn't have to worry about getting off to a good start against Pittsburgh, but they might against Buffalo. These games are set up where you don't want to play from behind. Of course, you don't, the first score, somebody's going to be playing from behind. So you don't want to be down 2 scores. You don't want to be down 3 scores. You don't want to be chasing all the way. I think Kansas City is one of those teams that can play that way if they have to. They're a team that they proved that against Tennessee, was it 2 years ago, or maybe it was last year? I can't remember, when they got behind so much. And then all of a sudden, blam, at halftime, they already made up that deficit.
That was the Texans 2 years ago.
Oh, Texans. I thought it was Tennessee. But it's the same idea. That's a team that I don't think you're ever going to count out of a game because of those kinds of things. And they've been there, they've been through all this. Buffalo's now been there, been through all this. And as you can see, these teams that have been there are the teams that are still there. Unless you're the Bengals, because they played the Raiders, who ain't been there. So Tennessee, they were there last year. So all of these teams are teams that have some experience and have been in these situations. And I think these are going to be great games.
I know we have a board to get to. I just want to ask you, I talked about last week how I thought your Bucks were getting a little disrespected in the opening number at 8.5, and it got bet down to 7.5 on Sunday before kickoff, and 2.5 against the Rams now pushed to 3. You talked about quarterbacks, you talked about Brady and Stafford. Really, really impressed with Akers yesterday. He brings a whole new dynamic. Sony Michel broke the line, and he had a scene. The old Sony Michel would have scored. I think he popped up for 45 yards, and I just watched him run, and it was just like he was waiting for someone to tackle him. And then Akers would get the ball, and he's just looking for someone to hit. So you think in a close game, 2 good defenses, and it probably comes down to Brady versus Stafford, and we all know Stafford's going to make that boneheaded pick sooner or later. But are you surprised at that opening number at 2.5 now that got pushed to 3? Or do you think that's a decent number? I know it's early in the week for you to have all your information there. I mean, but is it as a Bucks fan and what we do in the market, are you surprised with that number?
Not exactly, because a little bit of it is the recency bias, right? I mean, I think that the Rams are getting more credit for beating Arizona than what the Bucks do for beating the Eagles. I think people are sitting there going, "Oh well, the Cardinals, they were the fifth seed or whatever. They're supposed to be better, and then they're a good football team." And so I guess I'm a little surprised in a sense that I'm looking at a number that maybe should have been around 4.
Mhm.
And if it was 2.5, I'm not surprised that the number came up to 3 right away, which it is. And I'm looking at it from a perspective now of a little bit of influence into this game is that um, I don't have Tampa doing anything more than what they are predicted to do numbers wise on my side, but I got Tampa's defense as being a little bit better to influence what's going on with the Rams. So I come out the raw numbers were 29-25, and I know that's kind of stupid, but that's the raw number. But as it comes out and I played it out, I got 28-21. And that's 28-21 Tampa Bay, and it might have totally flipped if it was in away, if it was where the Rams play.
Well,
So
that was going to be my, they were a 17-0 lead against the Niners from hosting this game. And so technically, I think the Rams probably would have opened up like 1.5 point favorites at home against the Bucks. And that's where my next lead was going to be.
yeah, I think that in what Tampa Bay does, especially this year, home field means a lot, and they play different at home. Now, the interesting thing here for Tampa Bay is they might have some running backs in this game. So both Leonard Fournette and Jones are supposed to be able to be ready to go. They didn't activate Fournette last week, but he was right on the cusp. He was almost ready to play. So that means he'll be ready to play this week. And that they have serviceable running backs who are in there currently that are taking the place of both of those two guys. So the only player, and you think about health for the Bucks because they haven't had that health for a while, but the only player they're going to be out is going to be that wide receiver that got hurt and blew up his knee. So he's the only one, and I get it. It's not that he was a bad wide receiver because he's really good, and I guess you could call Brown a guy that isn't going to play either. But I think they can get past all that because they got some guys that can play. So I'm not going to worry too much about the Tampa Bay health, other than one key factor. The right tackle is a big problem, and you saw what that defensive line for the Rams looks like against the Cardinals. But if Wirfs plays, Wirfs can handle whatever the hell comes his way. If he doesn't play, that backup's in trouble. So they're going to have to game plan around a little bit of that, and that's going to be a sequential issue that I'm going to have to deal with in terms of trying to figure out what that game plan looks like and how they're going to maneuver around that weakness if Wirfs doesn't play. And according to what I've seen so far, he's in a walking boot. That doesn't mean he's not going to play, but it just means that, and he went out and tried to play when he got hurt. He just couldn't do it. So if Tristan Wirfs plays at right tackle, and he plays like he can play, then there's no big deal. They can handle whatever. If he doesn't play, that's going to change the game.
It's funny on my timeline Sunday when your O line was dropping like flies. I says, "OMG, this is a flashback of last year in the Super Bowl when KC had no left tackle, no right tackle, and Mahomes was, bad ankle, foot, whatever you wanted to call it." So that is a big, big problem. You talked earlier in the week, and I'm drawing a blank here. One of the quarterbacks you talked about, you have to get him off his spot, and obviously Tom's another one. Tom, not the biggest or the best mobile quarterback, as we know. And if you get him to get happy feet, he does have that deer in the headlight sometimes when you start to put pressure on him. And I've noticed the last few weeks he's been a lot more vocal because of his weapons being hurt, the Antonio Browns, the Mike Evans, trying to get the guys in the right place. And, Gronk's healthy. The addition of Fournette, Jones, Gio looked great. Tom loves his catching backs, and Gio looked great, very serviceable. So that's going to be interesting. Again, we spent a lot of time. Obviously, it's only Tuesday, but some people like to get to the market early and stuff. And these games, these opening numbers, for the most part, in my eyes, kind of shocking for the home teams. Some of these lower numbers, and it'll be interesting as the week progresses which way these numbers go.
Yeah, I'm looking at them, and like I said, I think that I don't 100% think you're going to get favorites sweeping the board here. And I think somewhere down the line you're going to have some issues with these dogs, because these are dogs that can play football, and we'll see. It's just like Cincinnati, right? I mean, Joe Burrow is the number one quarterback, and if you have the number one quarterback, you're in the game. It doesn't matter what everything else around you is. You've got the number one quarterback in the NFL. So, and that's just a perfect example of two, like Green Bay. So Rodgers, he's listed as the number two quarterback, and their defense is worst of all of them. But yet, they've got the highest advantage of any team in any of these playoff games. So that's how valuable a quarterback can be.
Agree. Today, only 2 NBA games. There's a boatload of college hoops. You seen anything on the NBA board yet, Scott?
Well, I'm there's one thing one thing my numbers tell me, and then one thing I sit here and go, holy shit, my numbers, holy crap, they're like, are they real? Because New York's been struggling here. I shouldn't say struggling. They got beat yesterday. We were on Charlotte yesterday, and they got smoked. And I don't like to necessarily play a team that just got smoked, as they're going to get smoked again. But this Minnesota team, Jeff, is playing some great basketball right now, and over the last 5 games, they've got an offensive efficiency rating that's really high, 119.8 points in 100 possessions. That's pretty damn good, and their defense is 109. So defense is a little bit above average, but the issue is New York's pace of play has got down to 91 possessions in 100 minutes. So that's a game of which pace is going to matter. And when I kind of look at it and kind of go there, this will be the 3rd game, I think, in 4 nights for New York. And they struggled yesterday, and there's a good likelihood they might struggle again today. And aren't they the underdog here in New York? Isn't Minnesota -2.5 on the road here?
Opened at 1.5 Minnesota, now a flat 3 all across the Vegas Strip. So I'm showing 68% of the tickets, 92% of the money, all coming in on Minnesota as we speak. And again, I think what you're saying is some great information. They played yesterday on the national stage, and now they're coming back on the back-to-back. And the fact that you said, 3 games in 4 days, a team that is struggling, and Minnesota has been on fire.
Yeah, I understand the line move, and I understand why people are betting on Minnesota. My thing is there's only 2 games, and I don't want to force a play. I'm going to wait and see what really happens on this number. If it continues to be where it's at, and the people keep jumping all over Minnesota here, I think this is going to be a good spot for New York, to be honest. And I know that sounds stupid as hell, but the reason I say that is because I always discard the number one highest solution problem that my numbers spit out. And my numbers in this game are 118 to 102. They say Minnesota is going to win by 16 points. That's what my numbers tell me. And I sit here and I go, are they really going to win by 16 points? And this line's 3. And holy shit. But that's the way that Minnesota's been playing, and that's the way that New York's been playing. But I also know contrarian style wagering that don't stay the same way all the time. So this might be a good spot to kind of look at if people are going to keep that 90% range, 85 or above range on Minnesota, that this might be one of those spots where you can get New York at a home underdog. They just got embarrassed yesterday. Are they going to get embarrassed again today? Thibodeau is the head coach there, and he'll find some kind of way to get these kids motivated to do something. So that's my thought is on that specific game. I'm just going to hold off. I'm going to wait. I'm not going to play the Minnesota side, if any side. I would like to play the New York side, but I'm going to have to wait and see how the betting action comes in on that. So that would be a closing bell kind of number that we'll look at later. And the Detroit and Golden State game, I'm just staying completely away from that game. I think the number's right. My number comes out to 14 points. It's I've got Detroit not scoring 100 points in the game. I got them scoring 98.2, 98.7, so 99 points. It just depends on what Golden State wants to do. If they want to run this game all the way up, then they'll win by 20 if they want. So I'm going to stay away from that one and key watch. I'm going to watch that Minnesota line.
For all the UConn fans watching and listening, tonight is a makeup game for our Huskies. Rotation number 635, 636. Butler at UConn. A number that opened at 12.5 is hit to 13.5. I did see a 14 early this morning while most people were sleeping. Seeing 83% of the tickets, 95% of the money on UConn here. What I will say is this: we got bit with UConn last week when they were 8.5 point, 9-point favorites against the Johnnies, up 10 late and squandered it. Went to overtime. And they just got out-rebounded, out-hustled, and they ended up winning the game by 6. Had a chance to actually cover that if they got one offensive rebound, and they failed there. So keep an eye on that. And quickly in hockey, I just wanted to go over a couple numbers for everyone. Some reverse line movement coming in on the Jets. Washington played yesterday. Washington opened up minus 135, now minus 123. A big move on the Ottawa Senators. Now, I'm going to tell everyone this. These Senators, every time I've seen these big moves and we've pounced on them, they have bit us right in the you-know-what. They're playing the Sabres, but they opened up minus 145, a corrected line of 193. So obviously I wouldn't release the 193. I'd look at the puck line there, but we're going to talk about that at the closing bell. A little money coming in on Carolina. Carolina's at Boston tonight. Bruins opened up minus 130, now minus 126. Here's probably the biggest move of the day. The Predators, minus 185 opening line, now minus 129 against Vancouver. That's Andrew McGinnis's preseason pick to make the playoff as a nice price there. Dallas minus 300 against the slumping Montreal Canadiens, now minus 315. And some money coming in on Florida. The Panthers have been red hot on the road at Calgary. Opened up minus 125, now minus 139. Your Tampa Bay Lightning, Scotty, on the road against the Kings. We had the San Jose Sharks yesterday against the Kings. Now they come back home. Your Lightning opened up minus 170, now minus 200. Again, at the closing bell, we'll take a look at that puck line. And the Islanders at Philadelphia opened up minus 124, hanging around minus 125. We've had the Islanders a couple times at the Flyers this year, and they've cashed. So it's been a great breakfast bankroll for Tuesday. At the bottom of the crawler here, guys, follow us at EC Sports Invest. Follow us at Webby20MLB. And I finally decided to add our YouTube and IG at East Coast Sports Investors. That's the most important thing we ask you here today, guys. Jump over to YouTube. Follow us at East Coast Sports Investors. Subscribe. It's free. That's all we're asking. And when you're there, just jump over to Twitch and do the same thing. So myself and Scotty will be back around 4:30 for the closing bell. In between time, We want everyone to enjoy the rest of their morning and their afternoons. And always remember this: if you are wagering today, always wager responsibly. If you have a problem, pick up the phone. There is an 800 number there. Ask for help. Why? Because we care. We want you here today, tomorrow, next week, next month, through the year of 2022 and beyond. So, for myself, Jeff Dawson at EC Sports Invest, Scotty Webb at Webby20 MLB, we wish you a blessed day. Stay warm on the East Coast, and we will see you at 4:30 for the closing bell.